All right, welcome to Operator Syndrome. Whoever you are, wherever you are, we're glad you take the time to listen to our humble podcast, which is, as you will see, more of a discussion between two friends, and it's pretty informal. So I'll turn it over to my friend Patrick, and he can say some more about what we're doing.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Patrick Nelson. I was a former Army Ranger, management consultant, and technologist. Um, what we're doing here is, well, we haven't quite defined what we're doing here, but we know that we want to tell our story. We were inspired by a lot of other podcasts that we've seen from service members, from actually people from all walks of life, and we thought it might be interesting to pair up and tell our stories with what it was like during our service and our transition from the military. So,
Right
Steve,
on.
how about your background? Why don't you tell folks about
Yeah, so my name's Steve Watkins, born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky. I reside in Kentucky currently on a farm in the middle of nowhere, which is by my choosing. And I'm a former Navy SEAL, stationed at SEAL Team 5. I had three deployments, including a combat deployment in the Gulf War, way back when we used muskets and things like that. I got out, got educated, I guess. Did a college degree, then a Master of Divinity, which is a seminary degree, became ordained as a minister, and then went back and got my PhD. And now I teach as a professor in college. And I went back in the Navy in 2009 as a Navy chaplain. I got a commission as a lieutenant 03 in the Navy. And I got a sort of second career. It's about as opposite a thing you can do from being a SEAL. But I have to say, and this is one of the things that Patrick and I will get into in the course of this podcast. All truth is paradox, I always say. And some of the hardest times I had emotionally and psychologically, which is what we have an eye toward doing with this podcast, to help veterans and get veterans talking. That's one of the problems as we see it. And we have a whole lot of information to share about this, but was as a chaplain, it was psychologically worse than the combat I faced. Having said that, I did not see near as much combat as Patrick. He has fought harder and in more entanglements than I ever saw. The Gulf War was just, it was kind of a fluke. It was over fast as it began, really. The ground offensive was 3 days. Imagine that. I mean, we totally ran the Iraqis out of Kuwait in 3 days. Now, we had bombed them and done other stuff for about a month or two, but
that.
pretty
Helps.
incredible. Yeah, it helps a lot. So yeah, but as a chaplain, I went to a command called Dev Group, Naval Special Warfare Development Group, which we'll talk more about. We're gonna kind of try to show the landscape of several worlds: the combat world, the special operator world, and that will be forthcoming too. We could talk for hours on this stuff, so we're just trying to get familiar with one another and with you, our audience. But I served as a chaplain in one of the largest mass casualties in history. It was the largest SEAL mass catastrophe called Extortion 17. We'll be talking more about that too, but that was harder than anything I did. And I didn't even carry a weapon as a chaplain, but it was these CACO calls. And for those maybe civilian listeners, or if you're not familiar, that's Casualty Assistance Calls Officer Team. And these are the guys in dress blues or dress uniform in whatever branch that have to go and notify next of kin, widows, children, parents, that their loved one has been killed in combat. That was brutal, and I'll save that for later, perhaps. But just to say, that caused me some of the most severe stress. Just seeing those families grieving, seeing my brothers in arms grieving, and so forth. So
That's a great segue into why we're calling this operator syndrome. So, operator is a loaded term in the military, and depending on the service, um, there are a lot of strong feelings about who and what is an operator. But really, the name came from there's a doctor who's got this idea out there, and of a syndrome, of a condition that relates to the experiences that we've had, and that doctor, and we'll in later episodes we'll talk more in depth about that, and get you that person's name to give them credit for it. But operator syndrome is essentially the effects, the physical, mental, maybe even spiritual effects that result of a certain type of lifestyle, and that lifestyle more or less is you know, high end, high risk training, intense training. Combat deployments can be a part of that, but not necessarily. And it really has to do with my understanding of it is cycling on and off, just um, this constant toil on the body and mind that's required to attain a high level of proficiency in anything. And the term operator in this sense, I believe, came about because the physician had in mind what they were seeing with um, special operators, special operations forces. But I think based on my interpretation, like it could apply to folks who did, regular conventional combat deployments, or perhaps law enforcement, or EMTs, firefighters. I think that the definition is broad enough that it could apply. And so that's the tone we want to strike, the tenor. Like that's what we want to speak to. Um, there are folks out there who did 20 plus years in our respective units, and relatively our term was short. But I think that we understand enough about what that feels like that we can speak to it, and hopefully we'll be able to push each other as we're talking about our stories. You'll hear our stories, but you also get a level deeper because we'll be able to talk to each other and ask those probing questions that maybe you have while you're sitting there listening. So that's the operator syndrome name. So we wanted to introduce ourselves, but we did also want to keep it light. We wanted to we wanted to uh, whenever you've got an Army Ranger and a Navy SEAL together, folks have questions. Folks are interested on our takes on each other, and if we're gonna do that, let's just get it out of the way with, and let's do it in this episode, so that way we can talk about some other things. And of course, along the way, these things will pop up again. But so to that end, I wrote out some questions. Steve will have some stuff along the way as well. We'll both answer. The idea is we'll both answer them. These questions are some of them are meant, some are serious, some are silly, some are off the wall. Um, but hopefully it gets us talking. So, first question, I talked about the term operator, and I said that that's a loaded term in some circles. Steve, why don't you tell me that term operator in your time and in your understanding, and in the Navy and in the special warfare community, what does operator mean? What's the general consensus about what that means?
Right, right. Good question. Great way to start it off. When a SEAL um, talks about another SEAL as an operator, they're talking about somebody, most of the time, like you say, it's I don't want to pin this down too tediously, but is somebody who is in a deploying combat unit. And the synonyms that we use that go along with operator are a shooter, an assaulter. Um, it's somebody that's a fully qualified Navy SEAL or other fully qualified special operator, Army Ranger, a Green Beret, an Air Force pararescueman who is in a combat unit and is deploying. So there's a lot of people, when in spec ops, one of the things you'll realize is that you've got the shooters that are the smallest in a SEAL team. Now, I don't know about the Rangers, operate on a larger operational unit than the SEALs do. We work in the platoon level, which is 16 shooters, but we have a support command. We have probably more support people than we do shooters or operators.
Mm-hmm.
So from our side, an operator means a fully qualified SEAL who is in a deployable platoon.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting take, and that makes sense. And the culture differences are unique there. So on the Army side, and by the way, we'll also go ahead and preface this with, well, Steve talked about when he served, around the time that he served, and I served, probably I served from 2005 to I left. I did a stint in the National Guard, and I left that in 2012. So that's around the time frame that I had served, and terminology evolves over that time, and then it's definitely branch specific and unit specific. So in the Army, the term operator traditionally was reserved for folks who had attended the operator training course, OTC, for CAG. Okay, so for the Special Mission Unit of the United States Army, that's how it was reserved. Rangers had the benefit of having a name already, so a ranger a ranger is a ranger, and so rangers in the time that I was serving wouldn't traditionally refer to each other as operators unless they were joking. But
Interesting.
you hit on something that's interesting, which is the difference between shooters, shooters and support. Um, and the Rangers are unique because all Rangers have to go through the same. And at my time, it was an indoctrination process, and then later on, it was an assessment and selection process. So there is, you know, obviously, like folks, assaulters on the line think of themselves a certain way, and folks who are not assaulters have that same understanding. But I think that the support and enablers, I think, is the word that we gravitate towards more often. Intel folks, mechanics, the Ranger Regiment has cooks. A Ranger thinks of them differently. I know that a Ranger thinks of an enabler, a support person, uh, with, I'm going to say, with more regard than maybe sometimes shooters from other special operations units see their enablers, and that's just inherent because we went through that initial training together, and we all see each other as, you are a Ranger. You went through RIP at my time, or you go through RASP now. You're a Ranger first and foremost, and we appreciate that. Yeah, you're a cook, but you're our cook. You're a Ranger cook, and that matters to us. So, um,
Interesting.
yeah.
So if I got that, that's really interesting because this is why we have these conversations. So you guys were talking about a tier 1 unit when you heard operator.
Yeah, I mean, that's traditionally, again, at the time that I
Hmm.
served, that's how it was reserved.
Yeah,
Over time, I saw um, sort of the general public lexicon of operator evolve, even since I've been out.
yeah,
Folks refer to special operations and special operators. Well, obviously, all the units under the Special Operations Command would fall into that.
exactly.
SEALs, Rangers, PJCC, everybody would fall under that umbrella, and that'd be right. But yeah, on the Army side, typically that was a term of reverence bestowed only to those who had attained that level.
Gotcha. So one of the things we want to do is educate, maybe we want to talk to a wide range of people, not just former operators, much less former special operators. I talked to a guy locally where I live who has suffering with a lot of stress, and he wasn't what I would call an operator, but he was in a unit that had plenty of stress. Um, so I wanted to, so we're going to be defining some concepts here, and I thought this would be a good term since I mentioned the word tier 1, and you may not have heard of that. Now I'm going to be very careful because I was at a tier 1 unit and I had to sign a 75-year non-disclosure agreement that I would not divulge classified information. I remember when I was signing it, the day I was signing it, to before I was what we call read into uh, a top secret program. And I thought, oh, 75 years, that's not really that long. And then I was like, wait a second, I'll be dead in 75 years. So anyway, just a humorous aside. So on the Navy side, there is a tier 1 unit, which is analogous to the Army tier 1 unit called CAG. And I'm going to be using the unclassified terms out of respect, not only for my non-disclosure and commitment and oath to do that, but also for a force, what's called force protection issue. And that is, there are families that, I mean, obviously that these operators are a part of, and they deal with some of the nastiest people in the world. I mean, really bad characters. And if they had the chance to hurt their families or them, they would do it. And so we still need to be vigilant. And I know there's just, you know, you could say, well, what about, you could Google this and find this out in 10 seconds. Well, yeah, but I'm going to try to do my part. So on the Navy side, our tier 1 unit is called Naval Special Warfare Development Group. There is another term for this unit, and you probably know what that is. It is so ubiquitous in the popular culture that you can just Google what I just told you, which is unclassified, and then pop, it'll be the first thing that hits, and it'll tell you the name of that team. But one of the questions I always get from, as a former SEAL operator, I was at SEAL Team 5, and the SEAL teams are divided up in numbers. So you have numbers 1, 3, 5, 7, odd number teams, and they're on the West Coast, stationed in Coronado, California, which is also where the boot camp is, BUDS, Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL Training, which is our selection, as Patrick mentioned, the Ranger selection. And that's just one. Then you go on to advanced training, and you still don't have your, what's called a trident, which is the emblem that shows that you're a fully qualified SEAL, until about a year after you go through all kinds of way more complicated, difficult training, at least mentally, than BUDS. On the East Coast are the even number teams, 2, 4, 8, 10, 12. And of course I skipped one. So the question I always get is, oh, you were at SEAL Team 5. Does that mean you were one step away from being at the other team? And I said, no, it doesn't work that way at all. It does. And it's a common logical thing to think, oh, you just go, you start out at 1 and then you go to 2, 3, 4. That's not the way it works. When you graduate from BUDS, you get orders to either the West Coast or the East Coast. And nobody gets orders out of BUDS to that team I'm talking about. Everybody gets orders to either the West Coast 1, 3, 5, 7, and there's many now, or the East Coast 2, 4, 8, 10, etc. And we all do the same job. We're all, there's some subtle differences between like a SEAL delivery vehicle unit and a non-SEAL delivery vehicle unit, but we all have the same training. We're all capable of operating on the same level. The tier 1 unit is a whole different world of operational readiness and training. These guys are the most elite fighters in the world, both on the Army side, we may say green side at times, or the blue side, the Navy side. These guys are just I was witnessing some of their operational training a while back, and from the time I was in till now, it was like a world of difference. I mean, these guys are just, I call them space cowboys. I mean, they're so good. They can jump out of a plane where you're looking at the curvature of the earth and fly across an international border, halo, and open parachutes, land, patrol in. And all I can say about their operational level is that if they're coming after you, you're gonna a goner. They're that good. They don't make mistakes. And it's amazing to me that we don't lose more of them, given that the hornet's nest that these guys are going into, they're probably suiting up right now somewhere in the world, getting ready to go strike a target, and a difficult target. So that's another distinction between the green side and the blue side. But tier 1, without going into, we'll go into that more in the podcast, but these are the most elite operators on both sides of the fence, Army, Navy, and Air Force. So we'll leave it at that for now.
Okay, here's another question, or here's another activity. Steve, go ahead. Describe the Rangers. If someone were to say to you, what are the Rangers about? How would you describe the Rangers?
Yeah, that's a good one. That's another good one. I would describe the Rangers as an elite assault force that operates usually on the company level, which is about 100, but not always. That we now I want to say something about the Rangers from the outset. They're probably as close to a regular SEAL team assault force as you're going to get. It's just the numbers. They operate on a larger number level, but pretty much the two main things SEALs and Rangers do are what are called direct action. That is, we go in and take out a target, or blow something up, or disrupt something. Um, and that there's a lot of misunderstanding in this world because there's a lot of other special operators, but say the Green Berets or the Special Forces, their primary mission is to train other forces. It's called FID, Foreign Internal Defense. Now we can all do FID. All special operators can do FID on a certain level. We did FID. We trained the Malaysian Special Forces. We trained the South Korean Special Forces. So we did some of that. But the Green Berets really have it nailed because they learn languages, different languages, so that they can talk fluently. They're very knowledgeable. Their knowledge base is probably wider in my experience. And I've been to two special forces schools, one called Sephartec at Fort Bragg. It's a, well, actually, it's classified, but it's a school of training assaulters. And then SOTIC, which is Special Operations Target Interdiction Course. This is the Category 1 sniper course, the highest level Army sniper course there is. Completed both of those schools. So I knew I got to rub shoulders with Green Berets a lot. And also Army Rangers. There were Rangers there at sniper school. I can't remember about Sephardic. It's been so long. So I would just say, yeah, I see Rangers as really analogous. And in case I don't say this too, I know I'm a little long-winded, but hey, I get paid to talk. I'm a professor, so I can't help myself. Range, there are two groups in the military that I was most happy to see come to our aid. Helicopter pilots, both with extraction platforms, meaning get us the heck out of here, or gunships, most commonly an Apache, an AH-64, which I don't know if I'd still be sitting here if it weren't for helicopters. They also scare the Jesus out of me because I always thought if I die, it'll probably be in a helicopter crash. And then Rangers, there were times, in fact, there was a famous episode at Paitea Airfield in Operation Just Cause, where it was a big debacle where a platoon of SEALs got dropped into an airfield to try to disable one of Noriega's planes when we did all that. Well, they met fierce resistance. They didn't know. And there's another one of those things that scares the bejesus out of me, bad intel. That means bad information. And they got pinned down on the airfield, lost 4 SEALs, were killed. One was paralyzed, a guy I met, a friend of mine. And it was Rangers that got him out of that jam. I mean, they had nowhere to go. They just were flat on the tarmac. I mean, there was no cover, and they were taking belt fed, which we'll get into that maybe. So that's how I would sum up Rangers.
So Rangers are the heroes that Navy SEALs dream about at night when they're tucking in.
I know. I go to bed every night with Rangerific over my bed because I'm so impressed. No, this is us having fun, and I mean, we'll joke around a lot, but no, these guys are tough. If there's two people I ever want to have backing me up, it would be Rangers and Marines. Marines fight hard and they're good shots and they're not scared to fight. And when I say that, there's so many combat troops out there that are awesome and that they're excellent. But sometimes it's hit or miss when you get into what's called infantry level ground pounder kind of troops. You got some good ones. You've got some people that have done stuff beyond what many Navy SEALs have ever done heroically. And I mean fierce fighting, units that are getting ready to be sent over toward Ukraine, called the 82nd Airborne and the 101st out of Kentucky. So it's a mix. And many of those infantrymen go on to be CAG operators, tier 1 operators. So there's no snobbiness as far as I'm concerned with it's and there's SEALs that are complete dirtbags. I've met them. And in fact, they usually get washed out. They don't want to fight. They wanted the glory. They somehow made it through selection, and nobody wants them in their platoon. That was a known factor. There's a lot of them out there. Or not. I mean, I'm not saying a high percentage of SEALs are this way.
Right.
I'm saying that I've met a number of them. And so, yeah, so that I want to say that piece at the outset.
I'll describe I'll describe the SEALs now. Um,
Thank you.
so you took the high road. So I'll need to do the same now. You took the high road. So, SEALs, if I were to describe them, they're, the premier maritime special operations force. I think no one will question in the world. I happen to be a patriot, so anything American, I'm going to go ahead and put number one, top of the list. Traditionally operate in smaller teams than conventional units for sure, and I definitely know that a lot of time and energy and resources goes into training a SEAL, and there's no doubt about that. I believe it's up to 2 years to get a fully qualified. And Steve, you were talking to this about finally earning that spot and earning that insignia that marks a SEAL. Even up to that point, I mean, there's a lot of time, resources, and energy put into training that person in all kinds of skills, individual skills, team skills, and then at that point, that person then needs to prove themselves within the unit. And as a ranger, I can respect that because the Rangers are very much about proving yourself on the team. I would say, the training pipeline, if you will, for a ranger is relatively short compared to a lot of the ones that are out there. A lot of the ones that include, individual infiltration techniques that people are learning, free fall, scuba closed circuit dive, language training. There are a lot of special operations units with a lot of individual skills that take a long time, and rightly so, to create someone who's got all the skills necessary to execute the job. But a ranger, at the end of the day, is first and foremost an infantryman, and we're fortunate in the fact that to be a good infantryman, first and foremost, you need aggressiveness, and you do need to be intelligent because you have to understand the battlefield and the situation that you're in. But it's really about attacking a problem with vigor. And in the assessment and selection or the indoctrination back in my day, the whole purpose was to find people with that type of mentality. And then once they got to the unit, it was there that the rest of the selection process took place. So, SEALs, again, highly trained individuals working in small teams, traditionally or doctrinally maritime problem sets. But as we saw over the last 20 plus years, definitely are able to apply their skills in a myriad of environments, as we all had to do. So let's get into some short, quick ones. Um, this is an interesting one. So I know in the Rangers, there is, when you go through training, people ask, well, did you go through in the winter or the summer? And depending on which training you participate in and when, you have an opinion of other people and the other class. So, Steve, when you went, were you a winter buds guy, summer buds guy? What were you?
I was winter. My hell week was in November. Um, but I have to say, and I know what you mean, the number one thing about the number one difficulty, and there's a lot of difficulties in getting through SEAL basic training, basic underwater demolition school, buds, um, is cold water. And they use that to make more people quit than any other thing there is. And if you haven't ever had the experience of a thing we call surf torture, you're really missing out in life. Let me tell you. They basically get you to the point where you're hypothermic, borderline hypothermic, and then pull you out. They've got charts and everything. They've got it down. They've got surf torture down to a science because they don't want to lose anybody. And there was a guy in my class that actually died of hypothermia. It doesn't happen that often. He died on a 7-mile ocean swim. Yes, that's a long way to swim. It's a long way to run for most people. Real cold water. But let me just, to be fair to my summertime Hell Week brothers, the Pacific Ocean is still doesn't get much over the mid 60s. They just leave you in longer. So they're still going to freeze you no matter what, and get you just as shivering and shaking uncontrollably in the summer. So yeah, there's a kind of, again, there's a kind of snobbiness. I was a winter class man, and all that. It's like, come on. There's no, they know what they're doing, and they're really good at it. So, and just to say too, just to follow up Patrick's point with like, what is a SEAL? A lot of people don't know what SEAL stands for. It's an acronym for sea, air, and land. So it doubles for SEA, and then A for air and L for land. And those are one of our defining features. Patrick mentioned we can jump. We're airborne. We can jump into the ocean, which was my favorite thing to do. I really did enjoy it. And we can lock out of a submarine, a nuclear submarine, swim in, or patrol in land. So we have a pretty wide range of insertion abilities, is what I'll say, ways to get into a target. And not only that, we train mountain warfare, desert warfare, jungle warfare, uh, Arctic warfare, winter warfare. So we've got to be able to basically, if the country were to call upon us to hit a target anywhere in the world, we could do it by training, hopefully, if everything went well. Now, the tier 1 units, Navy, Army, they can do it all. I mean, they're way up there, and better than a regular SEAL team. But just because they have more assets, they have more money, they're not as restricted by the military bureaucracy. They don't even, they actually work directly for the president and the National Security Council. They don't even fall technically within the chain of command of the normal Defense Department, although they are a part of it. It's kind of complicated. So anyhow, yeah.
Well, we're coming up on time for this first one, but I think there might be some value in continue on with this.
Yeah.
These are basic questions, some silly in our opinion, but people have the questions, so we're willing to answer it, especially as we kick this off. So I think we're gonna end it here. We're gonna pick this back up. So for like Steve said, whoever you are, wherever you are, and you're listening, and if you're interested, appreciate you listening, and we'll get you some more here. So take it easy, and we'll catch you in the next one. Bye.